Hey all, welcome to Caboose Divergent Discussions. I'm Tina, and I also have lived experience with autism and ADHD through people in my life. So I'm really excited to be having this conversation with Jessie today. And before we get started, just a quick note that this session is being recorded and will be uploaded to YouTube. We'll also have time at the end for any audience questions, so feel free to drop any questions in the chat. And without further ado, I'm really excited to introduce our guest today, Jessie. So Jessie is a pediatric speech language therapist based in Chapel Hill, NC. So where is NC actually?
On the east coast of the US.
Okay, my geography is not that good, but it sounds like a great place.
It's pretty good. It's not as nice as Australia, but it's great. We call it home.
Nice. And Jessie specializes in neurodivergent kids from 18 months through to young adulthood. She holds a master's in science from Towson University and has worked across schools, clinics, and community settings. Plus, spends a lot of time supporting kids and adults in the US, South America, and Australia, where we're from, or I'm from, before becoming a speech language therapist. Is that correct? SLP?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And she's passionate about neurodiversity, affirming care, inclusive supports, and helping families and communities. Jessie is an ADHD herself and parent to neurodivergent kids. So, Jessie, I'm so excited to have you here today, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Amazing. Well, let's get started, shall we? So, what is PDA?
Okay, I love that we're starting with the question that I can't possibly answer. Such a great way to start, Tina. But I do think it's important that we acknowledge, if we're talking about PDA, that we actually, at this point, still do not have an agreed upon definition for what PDA actually is. There really is no consensus at this point. You can get on any number of websites. You can ask any AI of your choosing or Google it or whatever, and you're going to come up with probably 15 different definitions of what PDA is. So I like to give that caveat that I'm going to still give you a definition, but it's my own definition, and it's very much an actively working definition that is subject to change and definitely will change. But what I usually do when I talk about PDA is I explain that there really isn't a consensus, but that I kind of have a definition of my own that I use that I made in collaboration with some of my PDA friends. And specifically, I want to shout out my friend Callie, who is on social media as Black Spectrum Scholar. Callie is an incredible human being, probably one of the smartest people I know. And Callie is also a PDAer herself. And so I think it's important that we're very much highlighting the lived experience of PDAers, especially when coming up with a definition or even talking about PDA. So with Callie's support, I'm going to read to you my current definition of PDA. PDA is a pattern of behaviors marked by extreme avoidance of internal, external, and self-imposed demands, likely rooted in anxiety. And the reason that I say likely there is that we don't know that for certain.
So, it's a pattern of behaviors rooted potentially in anxiety.
Yeah.
And what's actually going on in people's minds when they are experiencing PDA?
That is a really good question. And again, I'm going to answer it with lived experience because I think it's important that I always make sure people know that I don't identify as a PDAer. So I think that I have some adjacent traits that make it easier for me to understand the experience and also mean that I have a lot of PDA friends, but I don't actually identify as a PDAer. So I always turn to, especially PDA adults in kind of answering questions like this. So if it's okay with you, I actually have a quote from a friend of mine I would love to read. And I usually use this quote when I end my talks on PDA, when I give professional presentations. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, please,
Okay,
go
I'm
ahead.
going to flip over to another tab so I can read this. This quote comes from my friend Lucas Harris, who lives here in North Carolina, and is a friend of mine. He is ADHD, PDA, and is also an educator and works with kids and teens like I do. And this is a quote from him about PDA and his experience. Being able to say no and knowing that my no will be respected sets up a foundational feeling of safety. Trying to push me past a no is the quickest way to trigger a fight, flight, freeze, fawn reaction. And we can like put an asterisk on that and come back to that because I think that's an important piece to talk about. My no can change to a yes given processing time, but it's much harder to do that when my amygdala is super activated. And I have a mature prefrontal cortex to help me out with that. Kids, teens, and young adults don't. Find providers who see how awesome, strong, and resilient your kid is and don't blame you for being your kid's behavior, especially for kids that have a strong fawn response. We are not broken. Focus on supporting us and let go of fixing us. I just like really love that quote from Lucas because he just like brings it all together with his experience growing up as a PDA and then showing up in the world as an adult PDA and then as an adult working with PDA kids. Like he just really has like a really robust understanding of that experience. So I don't think we can necessarily answer the question of like what's going on in the brain of a PDA when we're having like a response to a demand, because I do think that individuals are individual. Like human experience is varied and robust. And I think that there's probably a lot of variation in what's going on there. But I do find it generally helpful to think about the PDA kind of neurotype and how one might respond to demands through a nervous system lens. I think that's really helpful. And when Lucas talked about the fight, flight, fawn, freeze response, that's getting into nervous system activation and how kind of that shows up on the day-to-day with those demands. And those three pillars are really important: the external demands, the internal demands, and the self-imposed. And I think it would be great to dive into those to talk more about it.
And when you talk about those, let's dive in right now.
Okay.
So external, internal, self-imposed.
Yeah.
Could you tell me a bit more about these and how this plays out?
I think it's really important to acknowledge that demand avoidance is a human trait. That is not something that is specific to PDAs, right? All humans have demand avoidance. And talk about toddlers, right? A toddler's whole job is to start becoming demand avoidant in order to start gaining the autonomy that it takes to go from being a little child, a baby, into being like a fully realized human being and gaining the independence we need to go on and support ourselves in lives, right? They're like, all toddlers are some form of PDA, right? Because they're like wired to do that. It's like part of our biology. So especially if people have like a 3-year-old and they're like, oh my gosh, they're like avoiding every demand we put in front of them. I'm like, let's give them a minute. Because first of all, they're supposed to do that. That's literally part of it. Like if we had a handbook on what kids are supposed to do, it would be in there. Toddlers are supposed to say no to everything. But yeah, let's talk about the internal, external, and self-imposed, because especially the self-imposed, I think, is like really, really important component of what actually is PDA versus the just normal everyday human demand avoidance. The external demands are sort of what we think of immediately when we think of a demand, right? Like an adult tells a kid to put their shoes on. Your boss tells you that you need to get them that report by the end of the day. Like those are external demands. We all, no matter if we're kid, teen, or adult, experience external demands all day, every day, right? They're always there. And people often think of those as being like, you know, the core demand that like comes to your mind when you're thinking of demands. And many of us have experiences with being demand avoidant. I'm extremely demand avoidant of doing my therapy notes or my documentation associated with my job as a speech therapist. It's super boring. I have to do it. So there's like this have to about it, which I'm like, oh, I hate this. And then really the boringness of it is a big piece of it. And so for me as an ADHDer, my executive dysfunction in relation to things that are boring is what really causes the demand avoidance for me, right? And then there are internal demands. And this part, I think, is not talked about as much, but it's really important that we understand this. Our bodies put internal demands on us all day, every day. Your stomach grumbles, sending you a message to let you know that you're hungry and that you probably need to get up and find something to eat pretty soon, right? That is a demand that our body puts upon us that we didn't consent to. So that is an example of an internal demand. And that you could just keep listing them out. My eyelids start drooping and I start to yawn because my body is tired and telling me that I need sleep. But I might be like knee deep into a video game that I'm hyper focused on. And that can cause a lot of dysregulation and upset if my body is demanding that I do one thing, but I want to be doing another. So there's like how that conflict internally can come up. And I think it's also really important to talk about the internal demands because sometimes with PDAs or even those who might not be classified as PDA, but just have higher demand avoidance due to any other factors, trauma, anxiety, executive dysfunction. There's a lot of other reasons why people might have higher levels of demand avoidance than others. When we see a child have a behavior that, quote unquote, to the people in the room, comes out of nowhere, right? It's important that we know that sometimes we can't see the demand, but behaviors don't come out of nowhere. They don't. Just because you didn't see the catalyst doesn't mean it came out of nowhere. So we have to also realize that some of those things are happening internally. And you might not know that they're there, but it doesn't make them any less real for the person experiencing them. The last one is self-imposed demands. And I always tell this like little story that a lot of people will go, oh, yeah, like as you see people start like nodding when this story comes up. A really common experience for especially PDA kids would be being invited to a birthday party by a peer. And they bring home the invitation and they're like super excited. And the parents like, well, do you want to go? And they're like, yes, like enthusiastically saying that they want to go to this birthday party. They might even be asking like multiple times a day leading up to the party, like, when's the party? When's the party? Like wanting that countdown, showing so much enthusiasm and excitement to go to the party. Can't stop talking about it. Then the day of the party comes and the PDAer says, no, I can't do it. I'm not going. There's no way. So that is demand avoidance in response to a self-imposed demand, something that you genuinely want to do, but now can't access because of things that are related to PDA. And that's a really upsetting experience and also very confusing for parents. I talk with a lot of families that are like, what do I do in this situation? They said they wanted to go. We RSVP'd. They were so excited, but now they're saying, I can't go. Like, what do I do? But I think that self-imposed piece is something that very much sets PDAers apart from those with just your typical everyday human experience of demand avoidance.
Thank you for sharing that. And when you talk about the self-imposed part, say if they're really excited to go and then on the day they don't want to, what's going on? Is it a particular thought process that's happening?
You know what? I don't know if I've ever heard a story directly from a PDAer about what's going on for them. So, but I do have like my own sort of hypothesis as somebody who spends a lot of time with PDAers. And like I told you before we started recording, I consider myself a PDA enthusiast, right? Like I love to learn about this and better understand it so I can better support my PDA clients as well as my PDA friends, and colleagues. But I wonder if part of what's going on there is anxiety based. And then also, like, if you think about getting ready to go to a birthday party and everything that's involved there, it's just jam packed full of micro demands. So many micro demands are wrapped up in that, right? There's the having to get ready for the party. Every little step of getting ready, including like putting on your shoes. There's a time constraint around when you have to leave in order to get to the party because there's these particular times, right? It's this time to this time. You can't like shift the time of the party. It's very demanding that it's within this particular time frame. There's also like there's a transition. There's always transitions, right? There's a lot of different sensory things going on when you get to a birthday party. They're often very loud. There's different foods. There's different smells. There might be kids that you know, but also kids you don't know. There's also expectations around how you will act, the feelings that you will display, how you will communicate at a birthday party, right? So there's tons of like external expectations and there might even be additional self-imposed expectations. You're also going to a birthday party to experience somebody else have their special day and you are not going to be the one having the special day. That can be really hard too for a lot of neurodivergent individuals to see somebody else being celebrated and being kind of the star of the day is sort of a theme that can be hard for PDAers and also just neurodivergent folks in general. So it's is just jam-packed full of micro demands. And then there's a lot of anxiety about what's going to happen and how will I be received and will I show up in the way that is expected? I mean, there's just a lot going on there, truly. Even with my own child I have two kids, they're both neurodivergent, but my oldest in particular, who is not a PDAer, but definitely has a healthy dose of demand avoidance, and especially when was younger, had a really strong flight response in response to anxiety. We used to get to a birthday party, and when we got to the threshold, he would freeze initially, completely frozen by the anxiety of going over the threshold into the party, and then oftentimes would elope with a flight nervous system response, which is like an involuntary response of the nervous system in response to fear, really, right? And he used to elope and just hijack it out of there, even though he had the same experience of so much excitement and joy and asking about the party leading up to it. The anxiety was just so huge. It maybe he had even like built it up to be this insurmountable thing in his brain. He was like so excited he couldn't even like get through that threshold. And so I experienced on one level, this in my parenting and how to support him through it as a child who might fall adjacent to like how a PDA might show up with these self-imposed demands.
And on that note as well, someone in the comments said, she relates, I'm 100% overwhelmed. It sounds so overwhelming for the person because all those micro demands, all that anxiety, so many things going on. And she said that going to a party requires many steps. I experienced it and see my youngest experience it too. He's 5 years old, had a party recently, built up ahead of the day, was pure excitement. And then when it came time to perform, he didn't want to.
Yep.
So for someone who's a parent who really wants to support their child, what should they do in this case with all helping the child through all the overwhelm and getting them to have a good time as well at the party eventually?
I think that it's so tricky to give like a blanket recommendation, right? Because every child is so unique. So there's certainly a variety of things you can do, but I do think that one thing that is important that most people would do and would work well for most kids is if they say, I can't go, to tell them that's okay. I think that it is really important that we always believe people about their experience, right? Whether they're a kid or an adult or, any human, we should believe that their experience is their experience, even if it's different from ours. And if a child says, oh no, I can't go, even though you might be confused about that with all the excitement leading up to it, I think giving a very neutral, okay, if you can't go, you can't go, and that's fine, right? Like that already releases so much tension to know that I'm not now also disappointing my parent on top of everything else. So like letting that demand go, letting some of the tension, anxiety go, and letting them know that whatever they choose is okay already is going to like de-escalate things a bit for them. And then you can offer to see, do you want to talk about your feelings about this? Or, would you like to do something else instead? There's so many ways to go about this. There always is the possibility too, though, that if a child doesn't go to the party because they say they can't access it, they might be upset later. And I think that it's okay, right? And to be prepared for that possibility so that you can coach them through that disappointment, which will then hopefully mean that they might be able to access it next time. But I would never force a child to go to a party if they say that they can't, won't, don't want to. I just wouldn't. I would believe their experience.
And when you coach them through it or just let them be and choose their own choice, you're giving them the autonomy as well.
Yep.
And when you also talk through them with it, do you also teach them what PDA is so they become more
I
self-aware, or
definitely
is that
wouldn't do
too
it in that
overwhelming?
moment. Not in that moment, because that moment is already like quite heightened, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, some families do choose to slowly teach and help kids to understand the PDA side of their neurodivergence and generally teaching kids about their neurotype. I mean, PDA is not a clinical diagnosis. It's not diagnosable. It's more of a descriptive profile. So like it's not reflected in the DSM or any other diagnostical manual. But like other neurotypes that are diagnosable, like autism, ADHD, et cetera, I do think it is important that kids growing up understanding their neurotype and what makes their brain, right? Like, and helping them to understand how their brain works, the incredible strengths that the brain has, and the challenges that also come with it. Because, autism and ADHD, et cetera, are disabilities at the end of the day, right? They're not superpowers. We do have strengths. I'm an ADHDer. I absolutely have strengths that are tied to my ADHD specifically. But I'm also disabled by my ADHD in a number of ways, and I need accommodations and supports in order to access the same things that non-ADHD people do. It's important to cover all sides of that, I believe. But I do think that introducing this information specifically to a PDA, you have to go about it differently, right? You do have to introduce that information in a way that is accessible, which often means being less direct, offering a lot of autonomy, strewing all of these things. And so I don't know if I'm allowed to like promote a product on these talks. I'll look.
I think it should be fine because if it helps the audience as
Okay.
well, then I'm sure they'd love to hear
Well,
about it.
because you brought it up. I wasn't planning on bringing this up, but you brought it up, so I'm gonna go ahead and talk about it anyway.
Okay.
I wrote a book it's an ebook, right? It's not like a proper book. It's not
Oh,
binded, but I wrote a book that's a PDA coloring book for kids specifically to learn about PDA in an accessible way. And it's on like Teacher Pay Teachers, and it's on my website. And you know, the truth is with any of the products that I offer, I think it's $8 or something. But if somebody needed it or wanted it and they weren't able to financially access that, all you have to do is email me or DM me on Instagram and I'll send it to you. I want it to be accessible to all in need. And so I don't keep things of this nature because I made it so that others could have it and have an easier time introducing these topics to their kids. Because look, I didn't grow up understanding my neurotype or my neurodivergence, and I had a very hard time. I white knuckled it through most of my life. My life has absolutely changed in the most positive of ways ever since finding out that I have ADHD. I am a new person. I feel brand new and I feel so much more comfortable in myself. I'm so much more accommodated and I'm thriving in so many ways because I know about my neurotype. So I am like all for, right? Yes, Tina, I'm all for kids growing up with those tools and that knowledge earlier. They don't need to wait their whole life to know this stuff. I can't even imagine. I'd be the CEO of some amazing company or something if I'd known I was an ADHDer since I was a kid. I'm still quite happy with my career, but you know what I mean? Like, I want kids to be well versed in who they are. I want them to have self awareness, self acceptance, and self advocacy. Those are the most important tools you can give a kid.
I love that. I love the passion as well. And for sure, at the end, let's talk about how we can find you.
Okay. Cool.
And I love coloring, so I would definitely want
It's great
to
for
see
adults
where I can
too.
get one of these. Yeah, exactly. I'm down. And yeah, someone from the audience again, the same person before, she said, for your information, we went to the party he chose and we talked about the elements of the experience and reaffirmed that I would be there.
Mm-hmm.
And we made a plan for after the party. So there was something else to focus on and look forward to. So it
That's a
sounds like a
great.
very gentle and
It
supportive
is.
way. Yeah.
It's really supportive and collaborative. Like, I really believe strongly in collaborative problem solving, like doing this in joint practice with a child to help them solve problems. Like, especially if they're like at that point where they're wavering and like they're going to be upset if they don't access the thing. If we can help them get there, or even offering something like this is another idea. And it all really depends on your kid and like how activated they are within their nervous system, too. But you could even say, like, what if we get in the car with your favorite snack? We drive to the party, we like look at it. And then I promise you, if you're like, yep, no, absolutely not, we will just keep driving, right? Like, that's a great like option to be like, could we kind of get there, see, and then you decide, and whatever you decide is absolutely what we're doing. Like, we're not tricking these kids because that's a no. That's just a no, right? Like, we're definitely gonna like absolutely honor their choice, but that's a really great option too, to like give them that opportunity to access the thing, but let them make the ultimate decision on whether or not they do it. But like again, like if the demand of getting in the car is not accessible, I absolutely would not. I wouldn't force it.
Yep. And it sounds like for them, it's micro demands, and for us, we can support them through micro actions and micro
Yeah.
steps
Yes.
towards it as
Oh my
well.
gosh, I've never framed it that way, but I love that language. Micro action, micro collaborative
actions.
actions that are made together.
Yeah.
Exactly that. Yep.
Micro collaboration.
Yeah.
And on the other side as well, I can see that, say, if you're the adult in this case and you're experiencing PDA, and you would gently also give yourself those micro actions
Mhm.
and be able to go, if I go there, I don't want to do it as well.
Mhm.
So is that a similar approach where you parent yourself through that as well. I'm asking on behalf of the other PDA adults out there who
Yeah.
might be
Oh, do
listening.
you mean like in your parenting journey as a PDA adult with a PDA kid, or just as a PDA living life?
As a
Yeah.
PDA, yeah.
Yeah. So my friend Lucas, again, like always is who I come back to because he's one of my best friends and we spend a lot of time together. And I just love all the ways that he shows up in the world because he's a very accommodated human being and he's very confident and comfortable in the ways that he accommodates himself loudly, and visibly without shame. And I think it's so important that kids, neurodivergent kids in particular, see neurodivergent adults loudly expressing who they are and accommodating themselves without any shame out in the world is like just an important thing. But I would say that that's absolutely what Lucas does. Like he knows what his accommodations are, his tools to go to, and he uses them, so that he can do what he needs to do. And when it's something that he's like, this is just not accessible to me today, he lets that to me and go, and he doesn't spend any time feeling bad about it. He'll just he goes to some sort of martial arts on a weekly basis. And I remember this one day recently, I think it was last week. We had been on the phone and he was like, well, I have to go because I got to go get ready for Kung Fu or whatever it was. And I was like, okay, cool. Have fun. And then he sent me a voice memo later and he was like, well, I PDA'd myself out of Kung Fu. And he's just he just has a way of talking about it where he's like, PDA won again. And he's like, but he doesn't feel bad about it. There's a humor infused to it where he's like, I didn't go. It's not the end of the world. My body told me, my brain and my body told me it is as a no today. And I listened to my own no. And I'm not going to spend any time feeling bad about that. I'm going to go get a pint of ice cream because that's what my brain wants to do. And that's Lucas. Lucas is one of the happiest PDAers I've ever known because he's just has that self-awareness and self-love and knows how to accommodate himself.
Go, Lucas. Let's go.
Right? Model adult. I love that.
No. And in that situation as well, when you talk about the shame of not going. So, for example, I can see myself in that situation going, okay, I should be going, I should be going to this. And then if I don't go, I'll feel perhaps shame or guilt for not going. And it's the question of doing it versus not doing it. And it's self-discipline or listening to your no. In this case, how do you know? Because there are so many things on the other side of pushing through your discomfort that you can also get as well. And if we always stay in our no or perhaps safe space, how do we balance that knowing that there's also a time to push through the discomfort to get what we want as well?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I feel like that the answer is going to depend on the individual and the situation. But I think one of the best ways to move through that is being an individual who has studied themselves and studied themselves well, understands their priorities. And really, you should be at the top of that list. You should be at the top of your priority list, right? Prioritize yourself, your capacity, your emotional safeness, your current needs, right? Our bodies and our brains we send ourselves messages. We communicate with ourselves all the time, and we really spend a lot of time ignoring those communications that come from within. And we should be listening more. And sometimes there's a way to even compromise and collaborate with ourselves, I think, right? Especially if something's high priority, oh, I had a birthday last week. I had a birthday event last week for me, right? And I invited pretty much all neurodivergent people. So I already knew. I was like, there's going to be a few cancellations last minute, right? I just know. I'm like, and when you're friends with all neurodivergent people, there's a lot of acceptance within of what these things are. And nobody's going to make each other feel bad about that, right? So I knew that was going to happen. But Lucas actually came. Oh my gosh, I'm going to have to tell Lucas that I basically talked about him this entire talk and be like, you have to watch this back later. But Lucas came to the event, which was going to be at a restaurant, which is so full of so many sensory micro demands, all the things, right? And we were going to do something after the dinner. But Lucas let me know in advance, hey, I'm coming to the dinner, but I'm actually going to skip the after thing because my capacity is a bit low. And dude, that language is everything. When you're neurodivergent to neurodivergent friendship, I'm yep, heard that. I got you. Go get that rest. Like, I'm celebrating that for him because he's listening to himself and what he needs. But he showed up for me. He just did it on his terms and knowing what he had left in the tank to give to this event. That's so beautiful, right? It can be a beautiful thing when you have friendships that allow you to communicate very authentically and you have this shared language as well, where you don't have to spend a lot of time. You don't have to even apologize. There should be no apology when it comes to things like listening to your body. We should never apologize. And Lucas didn't apologize to me, and I wouldn't accept it if he did. It was just like, hey, this is where I'm at. This is what I can do. And I'm like, that's awesome. Go for it. Right? Like, that's how that should work in adult relationships. And I understand that, like, sometimes it's going to be adult to boss. And often that's going to be like a neurodivergent adult to neurotypical boss. And that's going to go very differently. But in your friendships, it should feel very comfortable. And there shouldn't be a need for shame or disappointment within that.
Wow, that ties into something the audience just asked as well, which is what's the best way to advocate for yourself as an adult with PDA? I find that I can accept my change in choice, but others around me do not wish to add pressure and shame, and words are often lost on me in the moment.
Oh, yeah, that's big. Oh my gosh. Yeah, in the moment, because your nervous system is already activated if that's going on, right? If you're getting shamed or even in this like really passive aggressive way that a lot of people do, you're going to have this activated anxiety and nervous system stuff going on already. So then losing words, oh my gosh, that's just a very relevant experience. I see that all the time. Gosh. So I think preparing some scripts, like go-to scripts, is a great way to have the words in the moment that you need. Well-practiced, well-versed scripts that you can go to. I don't even want to minimize this because this is so real. It's in the world that we live in, a lot of us current adults, like we grew up in the 80s and 90s. We weren't growing up getting therapy where our therapists are teaching us about our neurotype and our accommodation needs and how to advocate for ourselves. No, we weren't even diagnosed, most of us, right? Like so it's a different world. We were not armed with this stuff. We're certainly, a good amount of us are certainly trying to build a better world for the kids now. But for adults, that's not the world we live in. We live in a world that wants you to white knuckle it. They don't want to give you accommodations, even if laws exist to protect your right to have accommodations, right? I actually posted a story about a neurodivergent friend of mine being bullied at work on my Instagram a couple of weeks ago. And this post went viral. It was probably the first post I've ever made that went viral because it's such a common experience. The comments are just flooded with neurodivergent adults telling their own stories of asking for very reasonable accommodations in the workplace, being denied those accommodations, being bullied, and then being forced out of the job. This is reality, right? So it's not as simple as me being like, yeah, just learn to advocate for yourself better and you got it, buddy. Like, because that's not realistic. I wish it was, but it's not, right? The reality is that you have to be a really strong fighter and fight and fight and fight for your accommodations, or you have to try to white knuckle it through this stuff, which I don't recommend that you do because that's a really fast path to burnout. Or hopefully you can try to find a career path, a job, a space that just naturally works better for who you are and how you show up in the world. I told Tina this before we started the recording. This is what I did, and I haven't looked back, but I'm not going to tell you it was easy. It took me 4 years to build to where I am now, where I actually am excited to go to work. I thrive in my job. I'm full of joy every day. I come home with capacity to be with my partner and to be with my kids and to be here for my family and to jump on calls with Caboose at the end of the day, right? It took me years and to figure out how to accommodate myself and not apologize for that and to build a workplace that is actually built around accommodating not only neurodivergent kids, but neurodivergent adults, because that is not common today. It's just not. So I don't have a super good answer. But I promise you that me and all of my really neurodivergent, passionate friends are trying to build a better world for our kids because it wasn't right for us.
Hmm. And fighting for yourself as well as fighting for your kids as well, and just building that path ahead for
Mhm.
everyone else who's following you as well. And on that note, can Lucas share his scripts with us?
Oh
Can
my gosh,
he? Can
I'll ask
he?
him. Well, I'll message him right after this and be like, "Hey, I ended up talking about you a lot on this thing. If you have like no demand, no demand, but if you wanted to share some scripts, people would love it, right? Like, because he is
Mhm,
an incredible self advocate, and he's just such a great role model for kids, I think.
mhm. That would be amazing. Yeah, and even scripts for parents as well
Hey,
to help
you know
their
what?
kids
If you
through.
wanted Lucas on the call, like you guys should. I'll give you his email. You guys should chat. You should get Lucas on here. I'm telling you, he has incredible insight. You would love chatting with him. He's just we just never shut up. It's great. We just talk over each other, and one phone call
I
turns
just
into
want to
two
learn
and a
about
half
kung
hours.
fu. That sounds great. Yeah, definitely. Lucas would be awesome to chat with. Um, and back on, say if someone was to have to do a big overwhelming task and perhaps it's self-imposed, how do they inject more autonomy and more, if they have to get through it,
Mhm.
how do they actually get through it then in that case? What are some hacks or
Yeah,
tips or even mindsets
yeah.
that they'll have to
I like
do?
this. There's so many good ones out there. Some people really like the Pomodoro method. I hate the Pomodoro method personally. It does not work for my brain. But the Pomodoro method is like, you got to do this task, and you're like, "Ugh, okay, I'm going to sit down and do it." But you like set a timer for a certain amount of time. You're going to work until that timer goes off, and then you could take a break and you could go do whatever you want for whatever amount of time. And then you come back, you set it again. So some people might use like 15 minutes or 20 minutes. And as soon as the timer goes off, you can go do whatever you want for that break and then come back to it. I don't like this personally. I've tried it, but what happens is like once I'm actually into the thing and the timer interrupts me, that pisses me off. And every single time it pisses me off, and I just end up throwing my phone across the room because I don't want to be interrupted. But so for some people, this works really, really well. So it's one of those things where you don't really know until you try it. My personal favorite go-to accommodation besides like the more obvious like sensory accommodations. I love sound dampening headphones. I like to have a clear workspace because visual distractions are big for me. Like I can't with visual distractions. I need to make sure that like all of my sort of biological needs are taken care of. I've gone pee, ate something if I'm hungry. I have a minimum of 2 to 3 drinks available, and I have fidgets. I've been using this entire time. This is my new Nido squishy cat, which I really like. So I'm a big fidget fan. And so I like to make sure kind of like all the sensory things are good to go. If you like a little bit of like lo-fi or whatever, like to turn a little bit of that on the headphones sometimes, depending on what I'm doing. But then those are sort of like the things I can do to kind of get me started. But then moving through it is hard. And so what I do is something that I might have made a name for. I don't know if somebody else has a name for this, but I call it a deal sweetener. A deal sweetener is an accommodation that I love to use for myself, but I also use for my kids, my own children, as well as my clients. And I talk about what it is and why it's useful. And I have kids collaborate on choosing these things with me. A deal sweetener is not a reward. And I don't like the word reward, and we won't be using rewards. Rewards are one of those things that people often are like saying, if you have an autistic kid and it's hard for them to get things done, do rewards. But like you get a PDA kid, that reward is going to backfire really fast. So I don't like that. And also, rewards are conditional, so they suck. So what I like instead is deal sweeteners. A deal sweetener is something that makes your brain sparkle, something that you really, really like and enjoy, that gives you a boost of dopamine, because dopamine is motivating. That's where we get our motivation from, is from dopamine. And you get to have it while you're doing the hard thing. You don't have to wait for it. You don't have to work for it. It is not conditional. So the example that I always use for myself is I'm a big coffee girl. Now, coffee in US is not as good as is in Australia. That's sad. That's a sad fact. Living in Australia ruined me for coffee, seriously, and a few other things, but coffee in particular. But anyway, I love an oat milk lavender latte. That's like my go-to coffee. It's a sweet little treat. I can't really make it myself, or at least I don't choose to make it myself. I have to go to a coffee shop and get it. So if I know that I have to sit down and write a report and it's going to be chonky, it's going to be like 2 hours of writing, I'm going to go to the cafe and I'm going to get my coffee that I love. And that's my deal sweetener. I get to have it while I'm working on the report. I don't have to work for it. It's not going to be taken away from me if I don't get the report done. No matter how much or how little of the report I do, I get to have this deal sweetener. It gives me that boost of dopamine and motivation to do the hard thing. And kids can do this too. And it's been really effective for a lot of the kids I work with, PDA or not. It's a really big help. And I love for adults to think through different ways that you're already doing this, because a lot of us are already doing these things, but we just haven't named them what they really are, which is an accommodation.
Mhm. What makes it work better when you're doing it rather than it being a conditional thing where you have afterwards? Because I can imagine that, say, if it's, oh, I finished this and I get to enjoy this as well, so it pushes me through the end, as opposed to having it whilst you're having, like, what's the difference in
Well,
terms
I
of
mean, there's a lot of
effectiveness?
reasons why you might not get to the end of a task. You're already going, like, so whether we're talking about a kid or an adult, there's a lot of reasons, a lot of things that can come up that mean that you don't actually get to the end of the task, maybe in the time frame that you specified, right? So there's already the disappointment and possible other feelings, shame or guilt that you didn't finish it. And now on top of that, you don't get at that point, we're talking about a reward, right? Then you also now don't get the reward that you were looking forward to. So it's like a double whammy, right? That sucks. Like, that doesn't actually motivate you to quote unquote do better next time, right? I just think like that's a carrot that we dangle that then gets pulled away, and now there's like disappointment on top of shame and guilt, and that's a pile of garbage. That doesn't help anybody, right? Like, making people feel disappointed and shamed about their performance doesn't help us to do better, but accommodations do.
Mhm, mhm. What I'm hearing as well is we're trying to make our lives easier, say if we're our own parent or our own best friend, or how can we look after ourselves as we do a child so that they can have a great time and also get through it as well? Because not everything has to be an uphill battle.
Yeah, it really doesn't. There's so many uphill battles already in life. We don't need to introduce like novel ones, right? Wow.
That's true.
Well, if you're a neurodivergent adult, either working with neurodivergent kids or you have neurodivergent kids of your own, I think one of the best things that you can possibly do is model self acceptance and model giving yourself grace. Oh my gosh. Model that so hard. Model not being hard on yourself for the things that are inherent due to your neurotype and your neurodivergence. And absolutely model accommodating yourself and talking out loud about how you're doing that and why you're doing it. Kids need to see that adults accommodate themselves too. This isn't something just for childhood. These are skills for a lifetime. Your neurodivergent skills actually become more more pronounced as you get older, especially for women. We hit perimenopause and all I won't curse on your call, but all crap hits the fan when you hit perimenopause, right? And so, oh my gosh, those accommodations, it's not like we drop those just because we like what, graduate high school or whatever. Absolutely not. In fact, you're probably going to need more than you ever needed before because your brain really starts falling apart as you get older. And so if we model those for kids, normalize that being a human experience and really just pointing out the ways that everyone uses accommodations, I think we're just setting kids up for a lot of success. We're setting them up to preserve a lot of their capacity too, because when you accommodate yourself, you're preserving your capacity. For a child, for example, who has misophonia, and is white knuckling it through sitting in the cafeteria during lunch, hearing all of the sounds of people chewing and eating and lip smacking and all of that, that's going to drain their capacity so fast. They're going to have nothing left in the tank by the time they get to their first class after lunch. Whereas if you have a child who already has this self awareness and knows how to accommodate themselves and uses like earplugs or headphones in the cafeteria, all of a sudden they're going to have so much more capacity to get through the rest of the day. We're not going to have kids that are falling apart, coming home and like just, having a complete meltdown the second they walk through the door, because those accommodations are really what save us from a lot of those uphill battles. I could go on
Mhm.
and on just about accommodations. It's like one of my favorite topics in the world.
Lucas's too, I
Yeah,
think. So,
definitely.
and when you talk about self-acceptance and going back to also, as you said earlier, getting to know yourself and what you like and don't like,
Hmm.
for people who perhaps have never or don't have that skill yet, what's one thing they can do today to start to get to know themselves
For adults?
for
Oh
adults?
gosh. I sort of like I get like an excited feeling just thinking about a neurodivergent adult starting that journey, no matter where they are, no matter what age they are. My mom got diagnosed with ADHD at the age of 63. It's just like, so like
Hey, congrats.
right? Like there's no wrong time to start loving yourself and accepting exactly who you are and stopping trying to shove yourself into this box that society expects you to fit into, because you don't, and that's okay. There's a way bigger world that you can fill up, right? What's one thing you can do today? I think, especially if you're a parent and you have a neurodivergent child, and gosh, I love this part of my job actually. There's not usually a month that goes by, sometimes even a week, where I don't have a parent of one of my clients who mentions something like, I've just started realizing how much I am like them. And like my whole brain just sparkles with those words because I'm like, oh, it's happening. Like they're starting to recognize like their own neurodivergence in seeing their child because, genetics being what they are, right? Like if you have a neurodivergent child, that almost never comes out of nowhere. And I get so excited, not only that they're starting to have that realization, but they said it out loud to me because you don't have to go on this journey alone. There are so many people that you can bring into this journey. There's so many amazing resources that you can start consuming that will help you along that journey to self-acceptance and self-discovery, which is like such an incredible thing. I love nothing more than to give out resources. Like I wait for people to ask because I don't want to overwhelm, right? But like when I start hearing that, like I'm starting to realize how much they are like me, I'm like, do you want me to give you a podcast? Or like whatever kind of information, like however you consume. Do you want a book rec? Do you want a podcast? Do you want to read this blog? Do you want, do you want to follow this person on Instagram that has an incredible story? However it is that would be best for you. Some people love a TED talk. I don't know. There's like a million ways to consume information at your own pace and to start that journey. So I think if you're starting to think about it, I think one of the best things you can do is reach out to your local neurofirming whoever and ask for some good resources. I think that's a great first step.
What's one resource from your library of resources that someone can use or go to learn more about themselves?
Oh gosh. Well, I'll tell you one that I was one of my first when I found out I was ADHD at the age of 40. I hope I don't mess up the name of it, but there's a book. It is more specific to women and those who are more like kind of femme presenting. But there's a book called Divergent Minds. I'm not going to remember the author. And you can read it or you can listen to the audiobook. They are both count as reading, whether you listen or read with your eyeballs. And that is such a great read. And often if I have like a woman or a mother who comes to me and says like, I'm starting to wonder if I might be insert some neurodivergence in the blank, that's usually my go-to book to recommend. That was a really impactful read for me. And I look forward to reading it for a second time, in fact.
Amazing. And I just Googled it. It sounds like it's Divergent Mind Thriving in a World That Wasn't Designed for You by
Yep.
Janara
Yep.
Nerenberg.
That's the one. Yep.
Amazing. Thanks for the
Yeah.
recommendation. And for sure, it sounds like being able to understand how your mind works better so you can better accommodate for yourself and advocate for yourself and your family as well.
Yeah. It will help you in so many ways. Like it will influence your parenting journey. It will influence how you start looking at your spouse if you have a spouse. There so many things start to come to light and will change and shift with this journey. And, there will sometimes along the way be family members who don't accept if you maybe do get a diagnosis and then share that diagnosis. And I think it's important to just remember that everybody's, you know, coming from their own place in life and their own understanding of things. And that doesn't diminish who you are and where you are in your journey just because somebody doesn't understand it. There will be plenty of people who do and validate that for you.
Amazing. Find your tribe, find the people
Yeah,
out there.
absolutely.
Find your Lucas.
Yes, find
Find your own
all of your
Lucas.
Lucases. I am fond of saying, like, I collect neurodivergent friends like Pokemon. Like, I gotta catch them all. You can tell within 30 seconds, like, if somebody's gonna be well matched for me. And then, like, I'm very much like awkwardly, like, do you want to be friends? You seem like you're like me, And I just like, I love my people. And I feel like I have truly an incredible community that I can rely on and talk to and that understand me, and I don't have to explain myself, and I can just be authentically me, and that's such a beautiful thing.
That is. And I hope that for everyone else
Yeah.
out there as well, because it sounds amazing. And I want to also learn Kung Fu with your friends as well.
When you decide
um,
to go, and if you don't, that's okay. Yep,
that's okay as well,
yep.
exactly. And Jesse, so we're coming towards the end, and I'd love to open up to some audience questions. So one came through, and they were asking, how do you think PDA affects those with eating disorders,
Mm,
especially for, say, older teenagers? Could they have demand avoidance
mhm.
when you're trying to support their eating?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I have right now an older elementary PDA client who, because nobody is one thing. We're all nuanced and many layered, right? And I've just started to realize that this PDA client may have what you might classify as an eating disorder, but maybe more accurately would be described as ARFID, and which is highly restricted eating, highly restricted eating. And there's so many things involved there. Certainly, sensory is a piece of this for this individual, but I absolutely think that the demand avoidance, that avoidance of the internal demands, is a piece of it. And then there's external demands too around eating. Like there is this expectation around meal times that is, again, full of like tiny micro demands. And he also has misophonia. And so then you have like the eating thing of hearing other people eating. And there's like so much going on there. And yeah, so that's absolutely the case. In this case, I talked to my client directly about it and got consent from him to talk to his family about potentially seeing an occupational therapist who is neuroaffirming, also neurodivergent themselves, to work on feeding to ensure that their nutrition needs are being met. Because with RFID, that's usually the concern. There's actually nothing wrong with like having safe foods and having a limited set of foods as long as your nutritional needs are being met. That's more of like a social problem for other people than it is actually a problem for the individual. But with RFID, there can be like some dangerous nutritional deficits going on there.
Jesse, could you quickly clarify what ARF stands
Oh
for?
gosh, I wish I knew. What does RFID stand for? I
Or
don't
maybe not
actually know.
stand for, what does it mean, just for the
Yeah,
audience?
look up what it means. I think the F and the R are food restriction. Can you Google it really quick? Because I don't want to get it wrong and tell them the wrong
No,
thing.
no, no, all good.
But
Yeah.
it's classified
Uh,
as a pediatric eating disorder.
yeah,
And it
all
could be
good.
like people could look at it and think it's like anorexia, but there's still something different going on at the heart of it.
Avoidant restrictive food intake disorder.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah,
I knew it was something like that, but I
amazing.
would probably get at least one of those words wrong. But yeah,
You got the
yeah. So co-occurring conditions is absolutely a thing, right? And we can't just say everything about a child is because of autism or everything's about ADHD. A lot of these neurotypes co-occur with many other conditions, and pediatric eating disorders is certainly one that we might see, but I think understanding what is at the core of what we see on the surface, that's very important. Is this restricted eating due to wanting to look a particular way, which we might call anorexia in that case, versus is it rooted in sensory issues and the demand avoidance, right? That would be very very different, I think. Yeah, that's an interesting question.
Mhm. So it sounds like working with the occupational therapist and then exploring further from there, that would be the first
Yeah.
step.
And I don't know in Australia or other countries who is usually doing feeding therapy. In the US, both SLPs and OTs can be qualified to do feeding therapy. I just don't do feeding
Mhm.
therapy myself. It's not one of my specialties. And so but I have an OT colleague who does. And so that's who I refer to. But wherever you live, there may be a different professional who handles those things. But I think if you are to try a therapy, that supports that area, I think the most important thing is to choose somebody who is neuroaffirming, understands how to support the individual from the core of what's going on, and is always giving them the autonomy to choose and is never working from a compliance-based lens, because you can actually make an eating disorder much worse if you're coming at it from a compliance place.
Mhm. It doesn't sound like a very compassionate way to look after someone if it's coming from a compliance place, because
Yeah.
You're just going by guidelines rather than looking at the actual
Right.
person
These
at
are
the heart of
people.
it.
Right. But unfortunately, that is still the case in a lot of places is how feeding is done through compliance and sometimes forced. And right, these are human beings we are working with, and they are nuanced and individual and many layers. And we simply cannot use one framework for any subset of human beings, and we shouldn't.
Absolutely. No, definitely not. Yeah. And well, we've come to the end of our chat now. And Jessie, it's been amazing learning from you and chatting with you as well. And if any of this resonated with our audience, where can they find you? Where can they learn more from you?
Yeah, I do have a website, www.divergeservices.com, which I haven't updated in quite a long time, so don't take too close of an eye when you look at it. Where I am most active is Instagram. I spend a lot of time on my professional Instagram, and my Instagram handle is Miss Jessie's Speech World. So it's MS_speech_Jessie's_world. I do a lot there. I post a lot about my topics of interest, which are PDA, Gestalt language processors, accommodations is one of my hot kicks I'm on right now. The audiate neurotype in general. And I work a lot with non-speaking individuals, and I do a lot of work with AAC. So that's another one that I'm talking a lot about on Instagram. And if you ever wanted to get in touch with me, absolutely DMing me through Instagram is a very easy way to get in touch with me, or you're more than welcome to grab my email from my website. I'm also on TikTok, but I don't really know what I'm doing over there. So like if you don't have Instagram, you're only on TikTok, you can find me, same handle, Miss Jessie Speech World, but like I'm bumbling around like an idiot over there. I really don't know what I'm doing.
You could be dancing. Who knows?
I did do a couple dances because I was like, apparently TikTok wants you to dance. Here you go. But I'm not a good dancer, so I don't know.
That's okay. It's all about the vibes.
Yeah.
And we can also check you out on Neuronuggets on the
Oh
Caboose
yeah,
app
I'm on
as well.
Neuronuggets. I forgot about that. I made my Neuronugget videos. I think I have one about deal sweeteners actually, because it's one of my it's
Exactly.
one of my favorite topics. Yeah.
So definitely people go check out Jessie on Neuronuggets. And if you're watching this later as well, feel free to drop your reflections, questions in the comments. And thank you so much, Jessie. Thank you everyone for being here today, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Tina.
Bye.